Relatively speaking, the aspects of self-publishing are easier than they have ever been. But does that still mean it's easy to self-publish? Hi, if you don't know me, my name is Amber Campbell. I'm an author and a freelance editor, and today, at the start of the new year, Happy New Year to everybody, I want to break down how easy it is to self-publish your book, as well as what makes it easier and what still may be more difficult or less feasible for you in this season of your career. If you've done any kind of research into self-publishing, then you already know that there is a machine that will now print and bind your books for you. There is an automated system for most of these platforms that they will handle all of the selling and shipping, and you can usually have a computer program do all the formatting for you. So all you technically have to do as the writer is write it and sell the books. But if that was truly easy, then you would not have clicked on this video. So as we know, there is so much more that goes into self-publishing than just writing the book. So I want to break it down into 4 different topics today, and those are going to be, once I figure them out, creatively, professionally, financially, and technologically. So let's go ahead and dive into that very first one, which you are probably the most familiar with, which is creatively. The first question, how easy is it creatively to self-publish? I've got my script over here in front of me, so I can actually stay on topic. If you watch my vlogs, you will see why we're doing that. But as far as these 4 individual topics go, being creative while self-publishing is by far the easiest. You have full creative liberty to design a world, flesh out characters, and throw in so many plot twists that your readers will suffer whiplash. You are the artist who gets to decide how the story ends and begins. Quite a few writers who haven't seen success in querying agents often seek self-publishing either because they've been told that their book does not meet the current market trends and therefore may not sell as many copies, or it's just simply because it doesn't fit into one genre, which is the easiest for an agent and the house to sell on a debut author. However, what we need to understand as creatives is when to be creative to serve the story and when to stop being creative for the sake of being creative. Because if it's not serving your story, odds are it doesn't need to be in that. So let me give you an example. If you want to write a vampire romance set in a high school amid an apocalypse, I need all 4 of those specifics to serve a purpose that only the story can tell. What we're looking at is vampire, romance, high school, and apocalypse. And the reason we're throwing high school in there is because that tells us this is specifically a young adult story, which means there should be some kind of coming of age element, right? So if I take out the vampire characters, the romance plot, the high school setting, and the apocalyptic time period, and the story is still the same story, then it proves that that's not something that needs to be in the story to make it strong or even unique. However, if the vampires exist because they're the only ones immune to the virus destroying humanity in the end times apocalypse, and the high school is where the main character is trapped in when communication lines go down, who also happens to be the child of a pathologist who knows about the disease before it released and killed everyone, and the child meets a vampire teen, loosely, and the 2 work together, and the romance is between the teen vampire who falls in love with the teen human, and therefore does everything that they can to protect them until they can help administer the cure, then yes, all those story aspects are completely necessary. Just because you have creative liberty doesn't mean you should abuse the power. So be creative in how the story is told and how the characters' personalities and careers or, settings, the lack of dialogue, multiple POVs, play with all of these formats and styles in writing, but don't do it in the sense of, writing a science fiction story set in the future with magical wizards and Queen Elizabeth and werewolves are falling in love in the background. No, don't give us a bunch of random topics in the sense to be unique. Now you're abusing the creative liberty. We do not want that. The readers do not want that. So, and actually, look at my notes. We're right on cue. You might say, Amber, I don't care what readers think. Well, if you are going into self-publishing for the intent of selling books, you have to care what the readers think. because that is your intended audience, not just for reading, but for your buyers. So if they're not buying your book and you want this to be your job, you kind of have a problem. So if my poetry isn't popular with horror readers, I am not offended. They are not my target audience. That is okay. But if other poetry readers read my collection and disagree with how it flowed, or the poetry style, or how they didn't expect the pieces that they read, then there could be room for me to improve creatively, either in the book itself, within the marketing of how I'm marketing the book, or how they work together. So that is something that I should actually take into account, and not simply look at, oh, I hated this, it was bad. But if they give constructive feedback in a review, that is something that I would recommend maybe looking into in your writing. Bring it up with your beta readers, your critique partners, and say, is this something I should be worried about? Ring died. It does this every time. I don't know why, but that's okay, because there's still light. All of that in terms of, properly explain the subjects and the blurb and the marketing, things like that. That is all on me as the author, because I'm not just the author if I'm self-publishing. I am also the marketer. I am partially the editor. I could be the formatter, all of those things. So that does fall on me, which means it falls on you creatively to ensure that you are putting out a product that your intended audience is expecting to read to some extent. That is how easy it is to creatively self-publish. How easy is it to professionally self-publish? So in traditional publishing, you have a team of editors and publicists. In self-publishing, you have yourself and your mom and your spouse, your best friend, and your co-workers, and do not let any of them edit your book unless they are editors. So I also, just FYI, someone who says they're good with grammar and they catch errors in emails is not necessarily an editor for a book, because as you have seen, it's currently underneath my camera, but the Chicago Manual of Style, which is what all editors use when working with manuscripts, is well over 1,200 pages, and I do not know everything in there, hence why I have the book. So someone who says they could edit your book and just look through it, it's called a proofreader, and even then, we don't want to insult proofreaders, because again, you have to know what you're looking for, not simply, oh, I know a comma goes in this specific instance. No. We need to understand where they could potentially be, and then you can actually make those changes. So let me start off by saying that finding a reliable and qualified editor can be difficult. And no, I'm not plugging myself in here, although I do copy edits for young adult and middle grade manuscripts. But I do suggest you find an editor like me who specializes in a genre or an age group. So somebody who says, oh, I'll just copy edit any manuscript I get. Well, it's like, okay, that's great, but also I would like to enjoy the manuscript I'm reading. And I think that's something important that should be important to you as the author, because you want somebody who's an advocate for your story, who's not just taking you on because it's a paycheck for them. This is a creative industry, and we have that liberty and that freedom to actually choose who we work with, so that we know they're going to be a cheerleader for the story we're trying to put out in the world. So right off the bat, you can look at Readsy and Editorial Freelances Association. I personally am on Fiverr, and I have over 160 testimonials. You also have Upwork and Contra. So just understand, the fewer testimonials they have, the lower their prices should be, because they're freelance, you're paying them. You do need to understand that they're going to give you quality work in exchange for your money. So having a professional editor read your manuscript is the best way to get unbiased feedback on your manuscript. Beta readers can be used to get impartial opinions, but be cautious with who you trust for beta reading, because of the rise of beta readers and ARC readers who are putting unpublished manuscripts on piracy sites. So definitely don't just, I wouldn't send out a mass ARC reader. ARC would not send out 100 manuscripts to ARC readers unless you actually have vetted them or know them or have learned from other writers and authors that they are in fact trustworthy. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Don't mean to scare you, but it is something, again, you want to keep in mind. I do recommend seeking beta readers on Instagram or Threads, because that's where a lot of the book community is, so it's a good place to start. So now we're going to go into what we do if we don't have a large online presence. So first, you grow your online presence. You do not have to have a website. It's very helpful, especially later on. It's not necessary, but you cannot not exist online. Your readers need to be able to find you in some way, whether that is maybe Instagram or Threads or YouTube, Facebook, even your Amazon Author Central page. I think that's what that's called. It's a very long name, but they should be able to find some information about you. Your Goodreads profile, make sure that's updated, just so that they can find you, find your other books that you've written, things like that. So you don't have to go super crazy with it. Please don't do any of those trendy videos, because it's not very common in the book community. In fact, you'll see if it's like something like poetry, it's usually just a quote, a static post. And then if you're looking at fantasy, romance, horror, and mystery, it's usually like a couple lines to really entice you, and then that line that hooks you in a reel, maybe 10-15 seconds long. So do not overthink it. It's not something that requires a ton of effort, especially early on, if you don't want it to, basically. So create the Instagram account, start uploading those YouTube shorts, and find your quirky found family on Threads so that you can attract the right readers for your books while giving them a home base to find you if they decide that you are now one of their new favorite authors. And now the question most new writers ask, which is, how easy is it to financially self-publish? Define easy. Is it easy for these avenues to take your money? Yes. Is it easy to afford all these avenues? No. No, it is not. So self-publishing is no different from making music tracks or selling artwork. If you plan to make money from it, it is a business, and you have to decide where you can allocate the funds, and if you're in the financial place, to part with funds you may not see for a while. So, quick personal information here. My debut made back its money in 4 months, and now every sale I make is just royalties, pure profit. It's all for me. I don't have to, allocate it from where I once spent it. My second book came out almost a year ago, about 11 months ago. It has yet to make its money back. But I also know that this is a long game, and the longer a backlist you have, the more often someone's going to find you, like your book, and then buy the others. So a cover designer can run $200 to $1,000. If you're not writing fantasy, it should be nowhere near $1,000. Same with sci-fi. Those are the two that would be at the farther end. An editor, depending on whether they're a developmental, line, or a copy editor, can run $800 to $3,000. A proofreader and formatter each can cost $300 to $600. ISBNs, if you buy them in bulk, can cost $295 for 10 of them, or I think it's something stupid like $59 for one, or it's ridiculous. So just FYI, if you publish an ebook, a paperback, and a hardcover, that is 3 ISBNs you need, so it's going to go through very quickly. And it's, in short, self-publishing is not cheap if you want to do it well. I do not recommend that your debut book be something that, first of all, no one has ever actually looked at, and secondly, has not gone through anything professional in its development, unless you are somebody who already had a creative writing circle that was very well trained and had maybe some experience in this area already. So, Amber, I watched this YouTuber over here, on YouTube, and they said KDP publishing is the way to make a living. Yeah, what did they publish? Was it poetry? Was it fiction? Or was it AI-generated nonfiction about their financial niche and how you can make money selling things on KDP? Was it a coloring book? I get those a lot. Was it a low-content journal with the cover they made in like manuscript, Microsoft Paint? Those things. That's how old that is. I almost forgot what it was. I'm just kidding though, because Microsoft Paint was really legit and it was amazing. But you get my point. I don't pay for a cover designer, but I have spent $50 to $90 on my covers because of stock images and Canva Pro. I have paid for a copy editor, which for one of my books cost me $116 because it's poetry and it was 7,000 words. But I rely on a critique partner from college to help as my proofreader because this is poetry and I'm not rereading 70,000 words over and over and over. I'm reading 7,000 to 10,000 over and over and over, which is a much smaller chunk. Also, both my critique partner and I graduated with our degrees in creative writing, so he's qualified to proofread a 10,000 word poetry manuscript. My point is, I can't publish anything for free, so anyone who says you can self-publish for free and make a stupid amount of money is not someone I would recommend you listen to. If you write fantasy, thriller, science fiction, again, your cover matters tremendously. If you aren't good with spelling, grammar, and punctuation, never skip the copy editor. If you don't have a writing support group or need developmental help, hire a beta reader, again, that is what I do, who can provide you that feedback at a much more affordable price tag than a full-fledged developmental edit. My beta reading services are a fraction of the cost, and most of my clients still get like 7 to 13 pages of notes, which is a great starting place, especially if you're doing this alone. So financially, choose what your manuscript needs the most based on your skills and your genre, and then make cuts where you can professionally to do so as not to jeopardize your book's success. How easy is it technologically to self-publish? This one may be more age-based, so bear with me. For me, as someone who grew up with computers, figuring out formatting took me about 10 hours of learning and trial and erroring, and now I can format a brand new manuscript in about 3 hours from start to finish. I actually think my fourth collection that I've already formatted took me 2 hours, I think is what it did. And I don't need to make any adjustments. On this last one, I needed to adjust the interior gutter, I think by a ½ inch, and that was it. It also takes me about 10 minutes to start a new book record on KDP from start to finish and order a proof copy. Ingram Spark, Draft to Digital take me a bit longer, but both of those are often done in about 20 minutes start to finish. For someone older, or someone who may not be great at computers, or someone who is impatient, and I'm talking about Ingram Spark here, this step may not be as easy as you would like it to be. So compared to 20 years ago, this is a blessing for independent authors. We, for the first time ever, have full creative control over publishing our books without needing a pallet of them to sit in a garage or a shed, because there were not print-on-demand pod companies. We don't have to do any binding, which goes way further back, and we can even market ourselves to potentially millions of people without spending a cent thanks to social media. But you have to be willing to learn all of that. Publishing the book, I think, is the easiest part of this journey. Marketing, on the other hand, is often the most dreaded part of the process, because this is the only part of the process that we don't have full control over. Yes, we control when we post, what videos we film, and we even can pay for ads, but we have no control over how readers will be impacted by those marketing tactics. So they may look at it, they may purchase our book, they may not, but that's the part we don't have control over. Oh, and another piece. It might take you 6 months to start writing and then ready to self-publish. Might take you 4 or 5 years, but then it is done, and the marketing for your book is never done. So that's where most authors face burnout. Actually, is not in writing or editing, it is in marketing, because when you're starting out, you can go months without seeing a sale, and it can be very discouraging to keep writing, let alone keep marketing a book that it doesn't seem to be selling itself. So you have to maintain that motivation and that trust that what you are doing, what you are writing, is what you're meant to be doing. And you have to first and foremost love it, just like